When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With TwinSpires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with TwinSpires. And now you can race to victory with TwinSpires tournaments.
TwinSpires is live with a preview of the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes and Preakness Stakes on Friday and Saturday at Pimlico. I'm Ashley Anderson, joined by a star-studded cast here today, starting with Eddie Olczyk. You may know him from a long career in the NHL. He's on NHL on TNT, NBC Sports, and Kentucky Derby Week was with us at TwinSpires all week long. It's very nice to have you, Eddie. Welcome to our preview show.
Great to be here, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
And then, of course, we have our regulars from the TwinSpires jury, James Scully, Darin, Zoccali, and Nick Tammaro, who has been with us at TwinSpires, does expert picks, race caller at Sam Houston, morning line maker for Keeneland. Very busy man, so thank you for joining us too, Nick.
Oh, honored to be here.
Darin, before we start off with the Black-Eyed Susan, I know we have some promos going on at TwinSpires, so tell everyone about that.
Yeah, well, the Churchill Downs Derby Week offer was so well received with record opt-ins and performance that we thought we'd duplicate it for Preakness weekend. So not just the stakes races, certainly not just the Preakness, the Black-Eyed Susan, but every race at Pimlico Friday and Saturday is going to be eligible for the money back for second and third. Second place if there's at least 5 horses. Third place if there's at least 8 horses. But we've got you covered from start to finish of both cards on Friday and Saturday. So be sure to go to the offers page and opt in. You'll even see that offer indicator that we have now on Pimlico, where it'll really jump out at you and let you know that we have that offer on each and every race at Pimlico Friday and Saturday. So really excited to wheel this back in 2 weeks, just like the Derby runners coming back in 2 weeks for a Preakness weekend money back, Ashley.
Sounds good. And I know we have a handicapping package coming out with Brisnet this weekend as well. I believe we have a slide for that. So check that out at brisnet.com for that ultimate Preakness handicapping package, as I said. And let's jump right into Friday's race. It is race 13, the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes. It is post time is 5:54 p.m. Eastern time. Eddie, I will start with you. This grade 2 event for 3-year-old fillies at 1 1/8 miles. How did you see this playing out?
Oh wow, Ashley. I mean, I had a real difficult time kind of coming up with a couple of fillies in this particular race. I did feel that handicapping the race and trying to see if the speed in the race and trying to also project what the weather might be like on Friday. So I was just trying to look for a horse because I think there's a filly in here that could close in a race that I think there is going to be some excitement early. And then the distance of going 1 1/8 miles for these fillies. So I wanted a proven filly. So I was kind of leaning more towards the 7-horse Reply, the local horse for Brittany Russell and Irad Ortiz. It was just the tease kind of where I'm going to go in this particular race. I had a difficult time of really looking and getting some separation. So anytime that happens for me, I just go, how's the race going to play out? And doesn't matter what the morning line odds or not. I'm going to take a shot with the 7 morning line 8-1 with Irad Ortiz Reply in the Black-Eyed Susan race 13 on Friday.
I like that pick. I will certainly get to mine in a second there, but I think the price is great on that horse. You mentioned the weather, trying to predict it. I know right now we have about a 24% chance of rain on Friday and Saturday, so probably not a totally off track, but we'll see what happens when we get to Friday. Let's see, Nick, what are your thoughts? Are you going to play a price here, or did you like the morning line favorite? Do you see a lot of speed in this race?
Well, I'll admit, Ashley, I handicapped this before the morning line came out. I just saw the morning line on my horse and was like, yeah, I'm not betting that horse at 5-2. But I picked Running and Gunnin', who I thought made some sense. It feels like it's going to be kind of a stayers type race. A lot of these fillies look like they might be a little bit more speedy than distance oriented. And I think Running and Gunnin' is a filly that'll definitely get the distance. They obviously all get the distance, but I think she can do it a little quicker than some. Obviously, you've got to like the company line, right? She ran against Quiet Side and Simply Joking last time out. Obviously, she was no match for either of those two, but this was a pretty big class test. She was coming out of a race at Sunland where she had really taken a key step forward, and I thought she took another step forward. Again, I mean, she doesn't put a scare into the 1-2 fillies in here, but we're talking about two fillies and Simply Joking and Quiet Side that would be in the neighborhood of 3-5 or 4-5 in a race like this. You know, not all grade twos are made equal. This was the grade two fantasy. This is the grade two Black Eyed Susan, but this is a considerably softer field from top to bottom just in terms of depth. So I kind of hope that she could outlast everyone. I thought Reply was a little bit dangerous. I thought Margie's Intention also was worth a look. I know she's been running against Louisiana breds, but this is a pretty significant trainer change just because she's going to Brad Cox. It's nothing against Brendan Walsh whatsoever, but obviously Brad Cox does so well with new arrivals to his barn. And I didn't mind her last race at all on Louisiana Derby Day, where she was able to get a good second place finish while wide on the course much of the way. So those were kind of my two. Again, I'm not thrilled with the price if that morning line holds up.
So you see an off the pace runner just like Eddie. Darin, do you agree? Is it coming from off the pace here for the win?
Yeah, I agree. To echo Nick's point, I don't think Running and Gunning is actually going to be favored here. If you take a look at her from a speed figure standpoint, I know the buyer figure liked her a little bit in the fantasy, but she was beaten 9.5 that day. And whether you're using Ragozin sheets or Brisnet numbers, she actually has the lowest prime power number in the field in Brisnet, which is not something I can ever remember seeing with a morning line favorite. And on the Ragozin sheets, she's just too slow. Kinsey Queen is the horse that I took a look at here. She has the fastest last out Ragozin last time out against a good allowance group that day, rallied from off the pace and what will likely be similar tactics here. Admittedly, I do need to see some speed from some of the inside runners here. I'm hoping that Liam in the Dust grabs the racetrack here from the inside, and maybe either Princess Aaliyah or Margie's Intention both go. And then we'll need Paris Lily, Moon Cachet also to kind of prompt the pace and set things up here. But I mean, if you draw a line through the fantasy, Kinsey Queen's form looks awfully good. And she was only about 3 lengths behind Running and Gunning in the fantasy in that spot. So I think she's a developing filly. The speed figures are moving in the right direction. And with the right setup, I think she's definitely worth the flyer. I don't think Running and Gunning is going to be 5-2. I don't think Kinsey Queen is going to be 10-1. But I do think we'll probably get a little bit more value with the Greg Compton trainee here, Ashley.
Kinsey Queen was in the fantasy as well, was fifth that day to Quiet Side. And of course, as we talked, Running and Gunning was a distant third. James, what are your thoughts on this field?
Well, there's, that what Nick said about all grade twos not being equal are definitely true in this spot. We got our only 2 runners exiting a win are both coming off of entry-level allowance wins. And really, other than Paris Lily, none of these runners have been on the lead in their last start either. So I don't see like a lot of pace, a lot of speed signed on. I think that, even the late runners are going to have ability to sit closer than they might in other races because the field could be bunched up. And I am on the same page with Eddie with number 7 Reply. This is a curl and filly who I think both of her starts, she hasn't had the best of breaks. I mean, she didn't really have any trouble last time, but in her debut performance, she got all bumped around at the start, didn't get away sharply, really rallied well to win that day at Colonial. It was hard to gauge the competition there, but I liked her effort last time in the Weber City Miss. I thought that was a really strong effort by Reply, where she rallied to be second to our stablemate Complexity Jane, who had everything her own way on the front end. I mean, 14 for the opening 6 furlongs in that Weber City Miss. Reply was away last from the inside post that day. Really made a good run, I thought, up the inside to be second. This is a progressing Curlin filly, and being by Curlin, she's certainly eligible to handle any off conditions. I didn't get the 8-1 morning line price on her. I think she'll be much shorter odds. And I think hopefully with Irad Ortiz taking over the mount, she'll get out of the gate better in the Black Eyed Susan and, sit mid-pack and come with a run when they turn for home. So I'm going with number 7 Reply.
I'm right there with you and Eddie. This was my top choice as well. And I'm not really sure, again, if we'll get that 8-1 price. But looking at prices, it was certainly intriguing. This is the lightliest raced filly in the field, but closed really well at a mile and a 16th last out, and with a longer distance should improve off that effort. Brittany Russell, a 29% winner so far this meet, and Irad Ortiz Jr. having the mount, I thought was a huge plus, working out well at Laurel. So this was my top play. And truthfully, I thought with the price of 5-2, Running and Gunnin was my play against. I didn't like the recent speed figures. So if it's going to be that short of a price, I don't want to back the 4, and I'd rather take the value with the 7. I do think Off the Pace is probably going to be how this plays out. We're going to have the 1 go to the front and possibly the 6. But again, will it be a hot enough pace? I still think the closing speed figures of Reply should be good enough to get the job done at a mile and an eighth.
You know, and I'll just say I did like that. I mean, you know, off of that debut, her damn special relativity. I remembered her. She was a late developing sprinter. I think Reply, those first 2 races are going to really benefit her in the same kind of vein where, and her number, she got a 98 Brisnet late pace and an 87 speed rating. And those are just right on par with the fastest runners in the field.
Actually, you mentioned Irad Ortiz. I saw a really interesting, but probably random stat, probably just as random as post 17 never winning a Kentucky Derby. Irad Ortiz is 0 for 23 in 2-turn graded stakes races at Pimlico, which is something that I think is probably completely random, and I wouldn't tell you not to play the horse because of it, but just thought it was one of those stats that it's just like, wow, how is that possible?
You know, I was.
Well, you know what I was going to say? Oh, go ahead, Ashley.
I was just going to say quickly with Margie's Intention, obviously previously trained by Brendan Walsh, and Irad had the mount last out in that state bred stakes at Fairgrounds. And now that Brad Cox is the trainer, I mean, he's pairing up with Flavian Pratt here, but I did wonder, you know, did Irad have a chance to opt for the mount on Margie's Intention? I don't know what went into that decision, but if he did have a choice and chose Reply, I mean, that certainly says something, but again, I don't know what went into that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think we've established pretty clearly just from this small sample of 5 that she's going to be a shorter price than 8-1. She seems very wise guyish to me as well. You know, I joked with a friend about her being a $450,000 Curlin out of a stakes winning mare. And the fact that she ended up with Brittany Russell leads me to believe that she's either not much to look at or doesn't train very well. But obviously in the afternoon, she's done her job so far. So I have no big issue with her. I would have more of a problem if she ends up the 7-2 or so that I fear you're going to be having to swallow, because she seems to offer a lot, both from the speed figure perspective of some of the ones that take wide trips into account and some of what we've talked about elsewhere.
I do quickly want to mention too, Moon Cache, that 87 Brisnet speed figure, James, that you were talking about with Reply. We also had duplicate 87s from Moon Cache on Brisnet past performances in the 2 starts since transferring to Michael Gorman. I feel like as a long shot underneath, potentially, if that horse can run back to her recent speed figures. Any thoughts on that? Or anyone give Princess Aaliyah a chance?
Yeah, I just want to throw out to the group. How much does the group, with the Lasix on and off, I mean, do you all take that into consideration on a heavy note, or do you feel like you're still gonna, you know, bet a filly or anybody else when they're coming on and off, especially when you get to this juncture?
Well, Darin, you've got.
I'll start by saying, or go ahead, Darin.
I don't know. No problem. My answer is just based on if a horse is coming off Lasix for the very first time, I don't typically hold it against her if I like it, just because I don't have a historical pattern to work off of. But if there is a history of the horse going back and forth from being on Lasix and off Lasix, and is noticeably run better while on Lasix, I'll definitely take it into consideration. But I certainly won't just toss or lessen my opinion about a horse because she's coming off Lasix for the first time without really anything to base it on other than just, you know, hypothetical.
Nick, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think it's I probably drive myself crazy worrying about it more than I should, but I do think it's more significant. I don't have data to back it up, but some people that I know that studied it better have said it seems to have a greater effect on female horses than males. And one of the things that I like to look at is in a situation like a horse like Kinsey Queen, the fact that she ran for a while without it probably makes me a little less concerned. The problem with her is that she got a lot better with it. And she didn't just get better. She got better with Lasix. I understand you can also argue, well, she also got better with time. But we're talking about like a double-digit speed figure improvement when she first got it. And I'm generally a little more critical of horses that get good at Oaklawn. I don't really necessarily believe they duplicate that form elsewhere. So I try to be critical of every horse, right? That's what we're supposed to do. But with this one, I'm a little worried that she might be a horse that's a little bit better with Lasix. Again, I mean, are you worried about it when they're 15-1? Not as much as you are when they're 5-2, when you think they, form-wise, they tower over everybody, but you still have that lingering concern.
You talk about, and I'm losing my voice, apologies everyone, but you talk about Oaklawn form. Sandman in the Preakness is a horse that I do worry, is he better at Oaklawn? But before we move over, any closing thoughts on the Black Eyed Susan, or do we want to switch over to the Preakness Stakes?
I think we're good. I think we
For the
covered it.
Preakness? Okay, let's move over to the 150th Preakness Stakes on Saturday. Post time is 7:01 p.m. Eastern time. A mile and 3/16 for 3-year-olds. Second leg of the Triple Crown. We have a couple from the Kentucky Derby, including Journalism, who was runner-up to Sovereignty on May 3rd. And coming off that short rest, so is Goal Oriented, even though he wasn't in the Kentucky Derby. Coming off short rest, we have American Promise from the Kentucky Derby. Also have Sandman in there. Are you all going for a new shooter or going with someone in the Derby? Eddie, I'll go back to you. Who is your play in the Preakness?
Well, if I can, Ashley, I'd like to go back to the Derby if I can on Journalism, because Journalism was my pick in the Derby, and maybe it is sour grapes. But does anybody think that Umberto Rispoli maybe got a little excited there right when they were turning for home and maybe moved a tad early? I don't know if he would have beaten Sovereignty, but maybe might have been a little bit closer. Anybody want to? Because it seems like, I'll say this, because in my real life, analysis and pointing out mistakes, or at least what I think are mistakes, in all other sports seems to be acceptable, and it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I learned that from my late mother a long time ago. But it seems like in horse racing, when a non-jockey or maybe a trainer puts a horse in a certain spot, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of critiquing of that. So I'm going to say that I thought he kind of moved a little bit earlier. Does anybody want to go on the other side and thought the ride was okay before we get on to the Preakness?
Eddie, I think you need to talk to me more, because I've never shied away from critiquing anyone and have gotten chastised for it myself. But I think and I'll keep this brief so Darin can offer his opinion too. I think really the way I viewed it was that I felt like Junior Alvarado rode Sovereignty and Journalism, in the sense that he was always going to move when Journalism moved, and I think Umberto probably got a little aggressive because he feared, being inside where he was, that the race could really come back into him. So he got outside and moved aggressively. I think it may have made a half length's difference. I don't think it made the ultimate difference, but I think it's fair to say that he probably pulled the trigger a little early. I think the Derby is just such a frenetic race from a rider standpoint that you have to make so many split-second decisions in such a short period of time that when he moved, he kind of had to, because it could get really ugly if he hadn't moved then. And it just so happened that Junior moved at exactly the right time. And we're giving attention to Junior's ride for all the wrong reasons, because it was a phenomenal ride. And it was really done to perfection. The fact that he got that horse to the rail from the post that he had to save ground, to then pop outside, follow the favorite, it was outstanding. So that would kind of be the way I'd sum it up.
Yeah, I think if you take a look at the chart and you watch the replay back, the horses that ran 1, 2, 3, 4 at the half mile pole were 16th, 10th, 15th, and 18th. So rallying wide from far back was exactly where you want it to be. And another way to phrase the question, Eddie, is if you flip the trips, does Journalism beat Sovereignty? I think that's a completely fair question, because Journalism was a little bit closer to the pace, definitely moved a little bit sooner. And Sovereignty, I think, probably had one of the best trips in the race, and I think the result is reflective of that. I think the two best horses clearly ran 1-2. Yeah. I don't want to say that Umberto cost him the race, but I think a legitimate question is, if you switch the trips, who wins? And I honestly couldn't answer that question.
It's hard for me to say. Sovereign
All
2 is
right.
my
Well,
pick.
I got
So.
my answer. I got my answer. All right.
Well, are you sticking with
Look,
journalism?
I thought I'm not. I'm going to try to beat journalism. I'm going to go with the. I'm going to go with the 8-horse Clever again for Steve Asmussen. I thought that was a super impressive race back on March the 30th at Oaklawn, and I think the goal has always been is to get to this race here at the Preakness. And I think the quickest horse, the fastest horse, rain or shine, bred by American Pharoah. I think Clever again is quicker than the one. I think will be if American Promise wants to go ahead and quarter horse it and go ahead. I think Clever again can sit the trip and rate a little bit and get the jump on journalism. I think this is an 8-2 all day long, and that's where the majority of my dollars will go to my TwinSpires account. Will be 8-2 all day when it comes to a straight exacta.
Nick, I got to go to you because we're talking about this Oaklawn form and how you're skeptical of it, and Clever again's coming from Oaklawn, but I know you also like Steve Asmussen. So what do you think about Clever again? And is this your pick or are you going elsewhere?
Yeah, look, I'm sort of Captain Obvious in here from a handicapping perspective. I think journalism is a lot better than these horses, and I think he'll win. I think the play for me is to try and beat Sandman in the exacta. I know that might ruffle feathers around some of the social media circles, but that's never been a problem for me. I think that's where the value really is to be had. I think Clever again is interesting. I think he's interesting for the exacta. My problem with him is that he's been able to dictate terms in both of his last couple of races. His pace figures are not really fast enough to get the lead, presuming that Goal Oriented and American Promise are both ridden aggressively, which I think, given their respective trainers and the way they've been most effective, you can kind of bank on that. I just don't have a great feel for this horse getting a 3-wide chasing trip and being as effective as he was at Oaklawn. Now, there's no doubt if he can do that, he is a very dangerous horse, and he probably is the biggest obstacle for journalism because he has upside. And we don't know really how good he is. We know what he can do when he's able to dictate terms to everybody. I mean, Jose Ortiz just about probably gave himself a stiff neck looking back all those times at the 3/16 pole of the race that he's coming out of, the Hot Springs. And he beat Gaming, who's a solid horse, came back and ran fine in the Pat Day Mile. But I think ultimately the distance and the fact that he might have to revert to some tactics that haven't worked as well. I think the journalism camp was always set on running him twice in 3 weeks. I think they planned on running in Baltimore as the Derby winner. And so I have no qualms about him coming back quickly. It's just in this recent day and age when horsemen have become so reticent to run back that this has changed it all. But historically, horses with 14 days rest or less have done extremely well in this race, including last year. When Seize the Grey came back, granted, he didn't run in the Derby, but he did run on Derby Day. So I have no issues whatsoever with the quick return. And, yeah, I'm a horse player. I've never put a saddle on a horse, but I can tell you when you have a horse at a peak level of conditioning, the last thing you need to do is start skipping races. You need to run. And the fact that he's in here, I think, is a good sign. I'm looking forward to him getting a little redemption, and I think he'll get it.
Michael McCarthy seemed pleased with what he saw when he came to Churchill the other day to check in on journalism and how he was looking on the track. Darin, are you going to try to play against journalism? I know you don't really like playing favorites.
No, I don't. I freely admit he's completely the horse to beat. And if you're trying to poke a hole in him at this point, there's really not a whole lot to do. Even if you tried to look up Michael McCarthy's stats, wheeling horses back quickly, you're not going to like what you see if you're trying to beat this horse. Because whether you play around anywhere between 10 and 16 days, he's around 30% over the last 5 years coming back in a short period of time. So that doesn't help the cause either. I think the pace of this race is going to be interesting. Does Goal Oriented send from the inside? If you go back and you watch his win on Derby Day, he wasn't a full out send from the, and this is why it's important to watch replays from the start. He actually got away third and had a couple of long shots in front of him, and it looked like he was getting a little bit keen, and Flavien Prat kind of gave him his head, and he went through in between horses and took the lead and made the lead before the first point of call, which is probably why he was only up ahead at that point, and then went wire to wire from there. I don't know if he's as quick as a horse like Clever again, and if I were Jose Ortiz, I certainly would be intent on trying to make the lead here, and if he does, I do think he's going to be very dangerous. The horse that I think is really interesting is River Thames. River Thames, last time out in the Bluegrass, I thought ran well. He got beat by Burnham Square that day, who had an incredibly difficult trip in the Kentucky Derby, where Admire Daytona stopped in his face in the far turn. And I think there's certainly an argument to be made that Burnham Square would have been in the conversation for third or fourth in the Derby had that not happened. And then 2 starts back, this horse got beat a neck by Sovereignty. And sometimes horse racing is really simple. And if you look back and you see that the horse ran second beat in a neck to Sovereignty, third beat in 3/4 of a length to Burnham Square, who ran very well in the Derby with the trouble, this horse has kept good company and he's run well against it. My lone knock on him is the concern about the mile and 3/16. It would have been the same concern I had about him in the Derby. I get that. But he should work out a good trip stalking in the first flight of stalkers. And I think he's going to be there at the wire. Similar approach to what Nick talked about. I'm completely against Sandman once again, even more so than I was in the Kentucky Derby, because he had, again, a very good setup and a very good trip. And if you watch the replay, he was following Sovereignty all the way around the racetrack. And when Sovereignty started to go, Sandman kept up with him for maybe a furlong and a half. But when they got to the serious running, Sovereignty completely left him in his wake, and there was nothing left in the tank, including Final Gambit running by him like he was tied to a pole at the top of the stretch. So once again, Sandman for me is a complete toss. I don't think he's going to get the setup he got in the Derby, and I'm going to try to beat him in the exotics. For me, it's River Tim's on top with Clever Again in journalism, Stone Cold trifecta in some form or another.
All right. James, how are you playing this?
Well, first off, just going back, I like journalism. I like journalism to bounce back and win the Preakness. And I thought that in the Derby, he needed to be closer to 10th because I do think he's a little bit of a grinder. At least he had proven to be a grinder in his stakes wins in California, really making up ground in the stretch. And being 10th or so going into the far turn, I don't think did him any favors. He just doesn't have the turn of foot of a horse like Sovereignty. And, you can make the argument Rispoli moved too soon, but I thought he had to go at that point. And he didn't work out for him in the stretch, but I do think that in the Preakness, he's in a 9-horse field, he's going to be able to sit closer. And he's going to be in position to inch towards the leaders on the far turn and be in position at the top of the stretch to put forth his best effort. And one thing about the pace is that, I think a lot of people are anticipating American Promise, going to the lead and perhaps, if he finally breaks better than I think he's been breaking in his recent starts, that will happen. But he did not get out of the gate really well in the Southwest or Risen Star, even in that Virginia Derby. Getaway Car cleanly outbroke him. And in the Derby, it was, he got sort of wiped out by Citizen Bull, but he wasn't going to beat him to the lead from the gate anyway. So I do think Goal Oriented will be sent from the inside. In the Preakness, only one start, the very first winner of the Preakness only had 2 starts coming into the race. But we have seen horses like Cloud Computing and Early Voting win the Preakness off of 3 career starts. I do think, though, for goal-oriented, Clever Again, and even Gosker, it is a tall task stepping up in this race. But with that being said, I'm going to take a shot at like some straight exactas with journalism. I think he's the fastest horse in the field. I think he'll bounce back with his best effort. I agree with all the points Nick made as far as the 2-week rest. Horses from the Derby tend to run back well in the Preakness. A lot of winners have come back on short rests. And a horse I'm intrigued by is Heart of Honor, just for the underneath awards. And I know I bet him in the UAE Derby off of his race 2 starts back in the Al Bastakia, where I thought he offered a brilliant late run that day to get up for second. We'll see him coming here late. I mean, he's not even in the frame right here, but he'll come flying along the inside. And the other thing about him I also really liked was I thought in the UAE Derby, he got in a little bit tight when a horse came up and put him in tight, turning for home, and he was a little claustrophobic. But once he got once that horse sort of tired and he got clear again, he finished well to just miss in a photo finish. So I do think if he gets that trip from off the pace, that horse is a little bit of a wild card for the exotics. I also am going to use Gosker because I think the price will be right. I liked his maiden win 2 starts back, and I liked his effort in the Lexington last time. I'm going to take a stance against some of the shorter priced horses for the underneath and the exotics. And I'm going to key journalism in any multi-race bets and play 2 straight exactas over number 4, Heart of Honor, and number 9, Gosker.
I'm right there with you, James. I feel like I have to key journalism on top. As much as I don't like playing favorites either, I just think this sets up pretty well for him. He got a good post and he doesn't have to face that large field. I don't think he'll get shuffled back here. So I'm going to play him on top. I do like that Heart of Honor has never finished worse than second in his career. And at the distance of the Preakness has been beaten a nose and a head his last 2 starts. But for me, it was 2-1, 6-4 was my top 4, my order. And I'll play Heart of Honor underneath and exacta, but River Thames was my most likely upset pick. But Darin, you made that comment about Irad and his lack of success at 2 turns, but are you not concerned in this race?
No, I think it's a completely random stat. Just like I would not bet a horse who's breaking from post 17 in the Kentucky Derby. I do give you guys credit, though. I think Heart of Honor has absolutely no chance. I think he's run against inferior competition in the UAE. I think in the UAE Derby, Admire Daytona ran dead last in the Kentucky Derby. The horses that ran the UAE Derby were always overmatched by Luxor Cafe, who also did not run well. I think the Japanese contingent was not at the level as it was last year, and I think it's just kind of a race that's got a little bit more glamour to it by how Forever Young ran and Teal Password ran last year. I don't think these horses are that good this year. So Heart of Honor would actually, I swear, he would shock if he won this race. It would shock me more than any other horse in the field.
I'm not picking him to win the race.
Yeah, I'm thinking about
I'll take it back. If Heart of Honor runs in the top 3, it will shock me more than any other horse in this field.
I will say that in his seconds, he ran second to Golden Vacoma, 3 back. That horse, a close second. That horse came back, won the Saudi Derby. And while Galactic Star didn't fire in the UAE Derby, I thought the runner-up was the best horse in the trip, and Galactic Star won that race because of his trip on the front end.
Does anyone give number 5 Pay Billy a chance in this race?
No.
Or to even hit the board?
I think he's the one horse that's been exposed on numbers. I think you can make a case for these lightly raced types that their numbers are eligible to keep increasing, keep it progressing, but he's just too slow for me to be a factor.
And it sounds like Sandman is a play against for all of us, even in the exacta.
I will say War of Will was 7th in the Kentucky Derby for Mark Casse. Sandman was 7th in the Kentucky Derby for Mark Casse. And War of Will won the Preakness. So that's the only thing I'll say.
Slightly different trips, right? War of Will's on a stud farm in Kentucky right now. Like, hey, man, you watch that replay, buddy? I had a little bit of a rough go of it around the far turn. But, one thing I wanted to bring up with you guys, being that, of course, we referenced Brisnet quite a bit. I was stunned at how good Goal Oriented's last Brisnet total figure was. He got a 104, which – look, I made figures. Making figures is hard. On a day like Derby Day, it's obviously extremely difficult because the day goes on for roughly 9 hours, and we had changing weather conditions throughout the day. But everybody else is pretty much in unison, with Brisnet being the only kind of outlier figure. So, either we're going to see that it probably is a little too high, or we're going to find out that maybe everybody missed the boat on this, but he got 91 buyers in consecutive starts. He got the same Thorograph figure. Darin probably can tell us what his Ragozin figure was, but he somehow improved significantly in terms of Brisnet figures. So I'll be intrigued to see that. I don't like him. I think this is way too much too soon, and I think this is a horse that the ownership group just wants to dance every dance. But obviously that number did kind of stick out to me as a little bit surprising.
If he goes to the lead, I'm a little bit concerned because I thought he was waiting on Hypnus in the stretch. I thought he had plenty of horse left. And when that horse did get close to him, he was still going to just kick on. And I never thought Hypnus was ever going to get to him. But he's so inexperienced that, how's he going to handle that crowd and the atmosphere in the Preakness?
James, if that horse had more to give than the horses I bet all the time have so much in the tank. I don't know. I thought he was all out. I thought he was all out, but I kid, of course. No, he I thought maybe an upper stretch there was a little cat and mouse going on, but then it looked like Pratt got into him pretty good. But again, it's his second start, right? It was his second start. He was stretching out in distance. There's a lot going on there. There's it's a big crowd, it's a wet track. So he clearly has ability. How good he is, I mean, we have no idea at this point. It'll be fun to find out in the long run.
Any final thoughts before we sign off today?
Just follow the value.
Covered,
If Sandman is
value.
7-2, if Sandman is 7-2, because
I'd like to ask you, do we think that journalism's going to be even money
or less?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
Okay.
I thought that, and then I went back and I started looking at charts for the last 3 Preaknesses and seeing horses like Happy Jack go off at 10 or 11 to 1, and Uncle Heavy going off of 7 to 1 a couple of years ago after running 5th in the Wood Memorial. The Preakness win pool the last 3 years has been more bizarre than the Derby betting has been, because the longest shots on the board don't get out of like the 15 to 1 range. And if the longest shot on the board is 15 to 1, I don't know how a horse could get down to even money.
Well, Epicenter was 6 to 5, and I do think journalism has a better resume than he did. I mean, he was also a longer price favorite in the Derby than journalism was. I think that's a good gauge.
So is the rail horse second favorite?
No, I think Sandman will go off the second choice. I think he'll come down a little bit off his price. The only thing I'll say is the last 3 Derbies is that all of those Derbies were won by a long shot, right? From all the way. I mean, Rich Strike was a mega long shot, but even Mystic Dan and Mage were pretty big prices. So I think everybody was chasing that big price. I think journalism will get pounded here. But the one thing you can't account for, which does not exist on a daily basis in this game, is the matter of recreational money. There's a lot of recreational money in this pool, and the verticals in the Preakness show it.
Lucas has won 6 Preaknesses. He's won his last 2 Triple Crown race wins came in the Preakness. And let me just say, I've gone back through the years. He never, even just Steel, he never has a horse go off at higher than 10 to 1 in the Preakness. That 15 to 1 morning line is ridiculous on America Promise. I wouldn't be surprised to see him open up at like 9 to 2 or something. He's one of those horses that will get bet. I mean, both his horses last year, Lucas, they should have been 15 or 1 or higher, especially just Steel off a last place effort, and he went off 10 to 1.
I think Oscar comes down too, right? And I think Heart of Honor will be a much higher price at post time.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I think Heart of Honor might end up the longest shot on the board.
Yeah,
I think so. I think he will.
Yeah, that's fair.
He and Pay Billy are gonna fight for it, I think.
Any other questions, Eddie?
No, I'm good.
We appreciate you joining us, Eddie, and of course, Nick, James, Darin. We will be back tomorrow for the TwinSpires jury to talk about this undercard for Pimlico on Friday and Saturday. And of course, watch and wager the Preakness Stakes, the Black Eyed Susan at TwinSpires, and opt into that money back offer as well.
Are we off?
Ashley, can you hear me?
When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With TwinSpires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with TwinSpires. And now you can race to victory with TwinSpires tournaments.